G'day all and welcome to Inside NBA. I am at NBA G Wiz and you can check us out on all the socials at Inside F Sports. Today's podcast is a special one. We're bringing on guest Dan Titus from Yahoo. So if you draft in a Yahoo league, you want to know a little bit about XRanks. If you want to know a bit about how rankings work in their system, about their ADPs, about the inner workings of Yahoo, we cover that. We cover the life of an NBA analyst, his journey there, some hits, some misses, and a whole bunch of keys to success, and even stacks in Yahoo. This is a must listen if you are in a Yahoo league. And if you are in a Yahoo league, don't forget to take advantage of the discount code INSIDE at Fantasy Scores. They give you insights into drafting with Yahoo. They help you to punt. They help you to project your team. They give you the Z scores to help you give you the best insight in your NBA drafts that are coming up very, very soon for fantasy basketball. Check them out, fantasyscores.com. Use promo code INSIDE for $5 off. Enjoy the pod.
Should the Spurs foul? Should Miami go for the three right away? Just attack the basket. James catches, puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang! Tie game with 5 seconds remaining.
Welcome to the Ultimate Super Coach and Fantasy Sports Show. You are now listening to the Insight Fantasy Sports Podcast.
Boom shakalaka!
What's good, Hoopers? I am at NBA G Wiz, also known as Matty G from the Inside Podcast Network on this Inside NBA show. And joining me for a very special edition today on a Saturday morning here, Friday afternoon in the Pacific is Mr. Dan Titus from Yahoo Sports. How you doing, Dan?
Doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me, dude. And that intro had me hyped, man. The Ray Allen buzzer beater, but also the boom shakalaka at the end brought me back to my beautiful pastime NBA Jam, man. I love it.
We're going to talk about a lot of things today, probably including fantasy, most predominantly. All-time top 5 video games, GoldenEye's on there, Mario Kart. You throw in the classics. 2K every year, even though it's 2K, you're going to say it. But NBA Jam was, I think, the most elite game coming up. What's been like your come up, I guess, like your experience in video gaming, in fantasy that's brought you to be like, what's your job, Dan? Tell people what you do.
I have the best job in the world, man. And I don't take that lightly, for real. Like it's a dream job because like I was a kid growing up, always collected trading cards, always was in the video games. And so like anytime I had a chance to like follow a player or like look at the back of the card and learn about their history, where they went to college, just their production. I was always obsessed with numbers. And so like I took some of that useless knowledge and I was like, oh, well, now there's games to kind of support that. So I started playing fantasy around 2001. Started out with this one website called Small World, where it was like an original like salary based team building exercise where, you know, the values would change and then you could add different players based off of where, you know, they fit into your salary cap. And I was obsessed. And then after that, it kind of gradually moved on to doing head-to-head with my friends through high school. And then I always kind of maintained at least 1 or 2 leagues through college. And so I've always been playing fantasy for the last 20 years. And it just so happened that recently, you know, during the pandemic, I had a full career, you know, working in the aerospace industry, doing project and program management for missiles and satellite programs. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. But like,
Yeah, I'm just going to go and like just do the bomb thing today and then just go and talk about fantasy. That's fine.
No, so that's the funny thing. It was like I was sitting in like these closed areas. I'd have to leave to go to the parking lot to do my transactions if there was breaking news. Like I had to jump on this because like every league I play in is like usually pretty competitive. So like the fact that I was valuing that over like, you know, kind of doing my work, what actually pays me, I thought that was kind of a sign of things need to change a little bit. And I was at the point in my career where I was like, you know what, let me try to do something different. So I went all in on fantasy. I started writing for Fantasy Pros for free. And kind of built up that sweat equity and just learning different things in the process that eventually led me to get an opportunity to talk about fantasy basketball on a podcast and then write about it more. And then eventually getting to Yahoo, which is a pretty unique opportunity. So yeah, couldn't be happier, man. And extremely blessed to be able to talk about a game within a game, man. It's awesome.
Way at Insight, like I know myself, Brano, Dell, all of us, like we just love numbers and looking at it. And like we do a lot of sports like you do as well. So you're not just an NBA head, you're a fantasy head. Like I read your stuff on Yahoo about NFL because you're a fantasy head, man. And I'm like, I'm trying to get around NFL.
Dude, I play baseball too, man. Like it's crazy. Like I chose like the two sports that I probably leaned into the most to get into the industry was baseball and basketball, because I'm like, they don't really get too much coverage. I know that people play them, but they're also the longest season. So people's attention span usually gets a little bit drawn out and like kind of like they're over it. Whereas football is kind of like 1 week, I guess, got to set some lineups and then it's over on to the next week. Whereas you got to do a lot more roster management and, analysis, I think, in baseball and basketball. So I was always just more interested in those. And I think that that's actually the unique path that kind of got me to where I'm at now, is like, hey, football is super saturated. Go talk about stuff that someone else isn't talking about. So I think there's probably room. If you guys are playing fantasy hockey, fantasy soccer, there's probably some room for growth there.
Oh, 100%. And I think it's like here in Australia, we've got the NBL, so we've got the National Basketball League. Come on down under and watch some games of some future NBA stars and obviously our homegrown blokes. But we've got NBL Supercoach really kicked off this year again. So NBL's moved to a Supercoach platform. So we're doing shows on NBL Supercoach. So I encourage everyone listening to this NBA one just to check out what Australian basketball is like and what we're doing down here in Australia. Go and check out those NBL podcasts because it's sick. And obviously there's the next program, which is bringing in NBA stars as well. Do you remember that next fix? Like when you were first playing fantasy back on Small World and you were trying to transition to head to head, do you remember that first, like, fuck yeah, this is great. Like that hook, like that, like oh, you're about to win something. Like there's this one drop and you were like, that's it. I'm in now and I'm going to start 4 more leagues. Was there a moment for you like that?
I actually think it was in a loss. So at the time I had a girlfriend that I was trying to convince to get into fantasy. And like, this is a battle I fought my whole life, like trying to find the one that actually digs this. Still searching for it now. But yeah, she actually wound up beating me in this league I was doing on NBA.com at the time. It was like the most janky, horrible UI. But for whatever reason, I'm not making excuses for the L, but it just gave me motivation. I was like, yo, this can't happen again. So I went all in. I started playing in all these random leagues with people. And I think that was one of the things that was always really interesting about fantasy to me, was like Yahoo and ESPN did a really good job of getting people that you couldn't find a community around you in your immediate, locality, but like there's other junkies out there that you can connect with through fantasy. And I think I haven't been shy about getting into public leagues. I always find that it's always an interesting way to connect with people and like looking at the way people view the game and what transactions they're making versus, the court of public opinion of the experts and stuff like that. So I think that was what really turned me on to, was like the ability to meet more people, across the world and the globe that appreciate as much as I do. But then also like I caught an L to my then girlfriend, and I was like never hearing the end of it. So I was like, nah, I'm never.
Was that your most, would that be one of your most memorable moments in fantasy? Or is there something else that's like the most, like, it doesn't have to be in fantasy, like you did a fantasy thing and something real world happened. What's been like the most memorable fantasy moment in basketball for you?
So far, I think it was actually just going to the summer league this year. This is the first time I've been able to attend as a media member, and being able to actually talk to basketball players and kind of share what I do and my involvement in the game, because it is a game within a game. But, these guys are still looking at their statistics. Like, this game is getting way more analytical. So when I can just spew off like, hey, you shot 40% on catch and shoot threes this year, they're like, oh, who is this guy and why is he talking to me about this? So I think that it's, like I went up to Trey Murphy, excuse me. And I was like, hey man, you were 40th in per game value this year. And he's like, I have no idea what that means, but dope, I guess.
Man, I got him in my team. I took some L's last year. I had Cade Cunningham. He went down. I ended up pulling in Trey. So he was like an absolute stud last year.
He filled in great for all of the injuries in the Pelicans front court, man. He was unbelievable. So one of the things I asked him, I was like, hey, so how can you get better this year? Like, what are you working on the offseason? He's like, I got to get to the line more. So I was so disappointed to hear him, get the MCL injury preseason, but like, I'm not shying away from him. He's only going to miss 10 to 12 weeks. So he should be back around mid-November, maybe late November. He's a guy that I think is going to go late in drafts, so you can stash in IL spots on Yahoo that I wouldn't be afraid to get it, because some people are thinking like, oh, is he going to start? Ingram's going to be healthy. Zion's healthy. I think he's going to start, man. I think he's going to start at least at the 3, and then you have Zion at the 4 and Valanciunas at the 5. I think that's going to be a really tough starting lineup, and then bring Herb Jones off the bench. Oof, that's going to be so disruptive. So we'll see what happens. But
I think the Pelicans. First hot take of this, because you've just ripped this off for me and I want to get to you right there. So you've just said that, and it's a little bit of a hot take that I want to ask you out straight away on that one. Do you think that I know this is one question that I had for you later. Do you think that this will be the season that the Pelicans should have had last year. That everyone was talking up hype over the Pelicans in 22-23, and we obviously know they didn't reach that by any way, shape, or form, injuries, the like. Do you think they're in line for that season this year that they could have had last year?
I think so, because in all those injuries, I think they also allowed themselves to get some resiliency and see what their depth actually has. And I think that they have a lot. Dyson Daniels looked pretty good in the summer league. And like, yeah, it's the summer league. You can take it for a grain of salt, but like he looks more confident. Jose Alvarado is an absolute pest. He's a guy that you can bring off the bench like a TJ McConnell that's just going to disrupt. You don't need him to do a lot. He just needs to play his role. And I think that the ability that those guys on the bench that weren't normally going to get that many minutes, but because all the injuries they had to, I think that made that team better. And if you can get Brandon Ingram for more than 50 games, if you can get Zion Williamson for more than 50 games, this team's going to be way better. The health thing, like that's going to be one of my biggest questions going into the season is like, is Zion healthy and is he focused? And if he is, I mean, you had an all-star there, one of the best guys at points in the paint, shots at the rim, huge field goal percentage. And also
top 10 NBA fantasy player. He's a top 10 NBA potential top 10 fantasy player. Let's say top 15, not to be like too high.
Free throws won't be there, and his 3-pointers non-existent. But outside of that, like he does the assists, he gets your rebounds, he can play defense. I think that the Pelicans are a scary team that, if healthy, could definitely be within a top 5 in the conference. I think that's probably a bold take, but I think that they could. There's some teams kind of middling there that I could see kind of.
It's a bit of a bold take, but it is true because this is like we were expecting this to be a Western Conference powerhouse last year, and if it clicks together, and if Trey comes back, as you said, healthy, and this is a healthy team. I mean, I think a thing we haven't seen in basketball is a healthy Pelicans team. Like it's just something that like we have this illusion of like this beautiful Pelicans team where it's like point Zion getting over the court, and he's a guy again, like you said, with the free throws, going back a little bit. Like that's not his wheelhouse. But if you're punting free throw percentage, this is a guy who's like value in your, like not in your league necessarily, but in your team to win your league, just exponentially increases. So that's one there. Tell us a little bit. You mentioned about the IL spots. It's obviously something that is in fantasy platforms. Tell us a little bit about the Yahoo NBA Fantasy platform and what are the key features that set Yahoo apart from maybe like your ESPNs or your Fantraxes or your other leagues out there.
I think that Yahoo offers some really cool features that previously weren't available. So if you use other platforms, you might have noticed you have the ability to play against league medians. I think that that's really interesting for points leagues because even if your team struggles a little bit, they still could have some success and you may lose. So if your team is still performing well and you're beating everybody else, like you should be rewarded for that. So I think that that's a really cool feature that they added. Also, you can play multiple opponents each week. One of the things I think that that's important because sometimes you just have bad weeks, but maybe your bad week is still better than, half of the other leagues. So I think it's cool to be able to play multiple opponents. So that could spice up your league a little bit if you're looking for some differentiation. But then also I think it's just the analysis. I am the sole writer for Yahoo, but we have really good partners with RotoWire and RotoWorld that, we have a ton of great analysis that comes through that you get varying opinions on players, which is always good. You don't want to be in some kind of a silo, just getting the same takes all day, every day. So I think we have a nice, healthy balance of that. But then also you get updated rankings. And then also just, I would say the UI of it, I don't know the last time I've played on ESPN, man, it's been at least a decade. And from what I've seen, they haven't made that many more upgrades. And so
I'm not gonna lie, man. The UI for Yahoo, I find as a commissioner, because I commission a couple of leagues.
Look, the customization of it.
I'm not hating on ESPN. I'm not going to hate on Fantrax. I'm not going to do any of the hate. I'm not a hater about it. I just have my preferences. And because I'm also used to Yahoo, man, I can just jump on my phone right now, add my waivers, get on there, add it, set it, it's done. And I feel like the user experience, especially if you're starting out in fantasy, you want something that you're going to be able to use easily and readily and get your head around in fantasy basketball straight away. And that's, like you said, I think something for the user experience that Yahoo does very, very well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think product is something that they pride themselves on. And they've been making slight iterations here and there throughout the course of the summer. Obviously when the rankings come out, they're always not perfect. But I think that the Yahoo team does a great job also of like, one of the things I've always had to work through is positional eligibility. I know it's very tricky with now positionless basketball, but we try our best to get all of the players that at least play some kind of minutes in a certain spot. It may not be for a period of time, but they've shown sustained opportunities at that spot. They should get the eligibility for it. So that's one thing that's always ever changing, but I think we've done a good job of trying to track the right players and make those adjustments as such.
And I think that goes across as well. Fantasy platforms, not just Yahoo, is that position eligibility. Like if you're a pure center, like you need to be a pure center. You can't be eligible for the power forward spot. But if they're those guys playing power forward, this is the guys that I love in fantasy. And I think it's one of my top tips and tricks for anyone out there, especially if you're new or if you're just looking for positions in your basketball. A one center league is generally enough in this positionless day and age, especially with how NBA rotations are moving. So you want to talk to your commissioners about that. But you want to get a guy who's a power forward because he gets you the forward eligibility. But if he has that dual center eligibility, you get that in the utility spot, you get that in the center spot, you get that in the forward spot, you get that in the PF spot, and you're golden. Like you can just milk so much more juice out of that in your fantasy competition and games. You don't have to bench a guy. There's nothing like, oh, I've got too many centers. And you're just trying to focus on rebounds. Like Jonas Valanciunas, man, I drafted him late. I thought it was value, but now you can't play him because you've only got one center and you picked up like Chet Holmgren, who's only going to be, I think, power forward eligible and center eligible. And you want to roll that guy out there and you want to get that guy out there probably more than you want Valanciunas for that matchup. So
yeah. One of the guys that I was really high on the last 2 years was Pascal Siakam because he got the rare 3 positional eligibility. He had small forward, power forward, and center. And for how much he was passing, you can slide him in your center spot. Like, whew, that was a cheat code. But I think now he's lost one. So I think now he's power forward and center, but I still love him at center, like for what he can do from a variety of categories and also, roto leagues, points leagues. Pascal Siakam's just a great fantasy player. He's going to be even better now that Fred VanVleet's gone. So yeah, that's definitely a guy that like fits that power forward multi-position eligibility spot perfectly.
You can plug and play them. You can plug and play them anywhere you want. I know when you're looking at your draft, you're looking at best available player, but just look for that eligibility. I think it's just a little thing that people forget because you get so high on a player and you're looking for the name and you forget the brackets.
Yep.
It's like if you're doing a math equation and you got to do like BODMAS and you got to figure out which ones first. You're like, oh, I've got to do the brackets first. Do the brackets first. It's like primary school mathematics for analytics. Just look at the fucking brackets, man, and you'll figure it out. Like,
man. Twitter would tell you differently, man. People are doing all kinds of crazy math these days. I'm like, wait, the math is not mathing. This is not what I learned in grade school.
This is not mathing. This is, but the brackets aren't going to lie. They're going to tell you, like, it's all great that you want to draft that guy based on the analytics and like your Z scores and everything like that. But if you can't put them in the team because they don't have a spot to go, then you're fucked.
Exactly.
And all your math is not going to math the right way, man. XRanks. What the heck is an X rank for anyone out there with Yahoo? Because when you get on Yahoo, I think it's something that your platform does. It's differentiated. So you've got the rank and you got the X rank, WTF and X rank, because people like do their heads in about them, how they come to them. But sometimes they're really valuable because they get them right. How are they informed more so than a rank, or how are they not alignment? What is an X rank for those who are new to Yahoo?
Man, that's the hope, is that we get it right, because the X rank is the expert rank and the expert is me. So hopefully I do get it right. But if you're looking at the default rankings, that's usually a compilation of my rankings, other partner affiliates that we work with, RotoWire, RotoWorld, as well as our own projections. So combination of all of that, whereas the X rank is just, where am I getting a temperature of ADP, recency and news, injury updates, positional battles, all that stuff. I update that regularly. So to make sure that when you're going into the draft client, you have at least the most up-to-date information. And obviously, a lot of this is court of public opinion. You could be higher on a guy than I am, or I'm too low on someone, right? So it just kind of gives a baseline expectation of the general range of where people are going and where you want to bank on value. Value always falls. So I could be devaluing someone where you could be high on them. So I think it's just more so a guide. If you don't have time to do all the research on your own, you're going into a draft. Hey, here's just some baseline expectation of where guys are going. And if you're targeting somebody, where you could possibly get them. So I try not to make my rankings by law. They're not law by any means, right? These are things that are going to be ever changing to news and information, but just gives you a baseline of expectation.
And I think that's what's pretty fair for people to look at as well, because when they're differentiated from ranks and league, this is based on past performance in the ranking, whereas X ranks it's almost like a cheat code for like the Dan Titus big board in a way. It's like, where do you see, it's pretty much like, you've got to look at X ranks as like, okay, maybe you were thinking about a power forward like Pascal Siakam. You're going to rate Pascal Siakam much higher than other guys because you find that value in that eligibility. So that's more of an asset that you want to grab for your team. So it's going to shoot it up the X rank. So you got to look at these rankings as nothing is Bible. I think like the biggest lesson in fantasy is sometimes your gut is the goal. Like, people who were high on Paul Reed last season to draft him in for a couple of games and he blows up, instead of thinking a more proven center, and then all of a sudden the guy gets a spot, they do some nice work, and then there's talk about him getting a starting position this season instead of PJ Tucker. So there's like guys who you just feel in your gut are going to have an opportunity. So like you said, man, it's not a Bible law, but this is like the Dan Titus big board is an X rank, and these are the things you want to pay attention to and how they change from also ADP data. So it's like if you get the sample size of the three, like that's huge. Like if you look at the X rank, you look at the rank, and you look at the ADP, that's where you can find some really good cheeky value in your draft. What is the X rank this season that you find that you've got the best and the guys shot up to where you had them and you're like, yeah, I told you so? Where is the I told you so right now? Like, where is someone you were really hype on, you were really like leaning into this season, and they've started to find that form in their ADP zone?
It's probably Cade Cunningham, because I think initially I think the market was kind of valuing him as like, oh, okay, he's kind of this breakout. He had a good, rookie season, and then he got hurt. So like, where does he kind of fit in off of an injury? But the Detroit Pistons got better in the offseason. I think getting Monty Williams there, drafting Asur Thompson, and they brought in a better point guard than Killian Hayes and Monty Morris. So I think that they actually have a better team now. So I was like, how do you factor that in there? Because Cade was already like a top 40 draft pick last year. So how aggressively do I put him up there? And I think right now I have him in the low 30s. And coming off an injury, I feel like he's going to be better than a lot of people. And there's probably going to be a point, if I see enough in training camp, that maybe he can get into the high 20s. Or the late 20s.
He's getting there. He's getting there.
Yeah.
If I have any sway in fantasy world, myself and Adam King, Kingy.
Yeah.
We're trying to. Kingy. We're trying to. We've been high on Cade Cunningham. He literally looks like Moses has come down with the tablets from. Like he's just this. Like he's just like he's given the keys to the biblical temple of the Pistons. He's gone up there. He's met with Monty Williams. He's walked down with the 10 Pistons commandments, and he's going to start like laying sway to everyone in the NBA.
Yeah, that's hilarious. But you're right though, man. And I think we caught a glimpse of it at over the course of the offseason with the USA team. The chemistry with him and Jalen Duren, I can't deny that connection. And I think I just actually wrote about it a couple of days ago, but I think Jalen Duren with Cade Cunningham is like a LaMelo Ball with Mark Williams. Like these guys have just a lot of upside of catching lobs, being that rim protecting threat that's going to get you a double-double with a good high field goal percentage and potentially some blocks too. So and Cade's just going to feed all of that. I love it.
Man, I've got a bit of a theory. I'm actually doing this is, I guess if you're listening or watching this pod, we're pre-recording this one. I'm doing one after this morning with Alex Reclean from CBS and some of the inside guys as well. It's going to be good, and it's a stacks draft. So I have this thing about stacks this season in the NBA. So I'm leaning into this fun punt build of getting some dudes in stacks, and I'm actually leaning into a bit of a Piston stack because I've been picking up Asur Thompson so late. I think Asur is going to climb.
That stack with Cade and Duren. Ooh.
So my stack today in the draft, and I haven't told anyone this. I haven't told Alex exactly. I said, these are the ones we're looking at because I've got a whole bunch of stacks theories. I'd love to get you on for a mock with stacks, man. It's so fun.
Awesome because we only talk about stacks in football, but I love
you do, and that's where I've stolen this from because I'm new to football this season. Like I love my NFL. I played NFL when I was fat. I used to look like I ate me. And that's when I was playing in I was like 130, 140 kilos. Like I was so big, it would maybe like a 0 and then around to like the 120 and there was a gap and then back to 0. So I weighed like 13 kilograms. It was nuts. So I used to play lineman, and in Australia, we don't have that many guys playing. So you'd play offensive line, defensive line, and specialty teams. So I was playing that for a couple of years, and I decided to get back into NFL this season with fantasy. And I started looking at these stacks and look how the schedule was going this season. And I was like, geez, there's some fun stacks. So one that I'm high on, and here you go. This is a Pacers stack. Think about a Pacers stack, because that's what I'm going to try and draft today. Halliburton, Turner, Buddy Hield right now while he's still on the team. Obi Toppin late, because I think there's breakout potential for that one. And you can get Benedict Mathurin in at the end, but that one of like Halliburton and Turner, I'm really in on right there. But the big sleeper on that one is Bruce Brown. So you could literally take 5 Pacers, and they've got a really friendly schedule. OKC, Shea, Giddy, Chet, just those 3 off the top, and then you can do it. And then Pistons, man, so my thing today is I'm going to try and get a Pacers stack going on. Like I'm drafting 5th. I'm going to try and pick up Tyrese. On my second round back, I was going to pick up Cade in the second round. I think it's way too early, but I'm not going to get him back on the third because I'm going to pick up Miles Turner in my third. And then I'm going to get Jalen Duren late, Asua Thompson late, and Jaden Ivey is being so slept on. You could literally, there's guys, and then Asua Thompson at the very second last pick in my draft. And so I've got these couple of, I'm just going to lean heavy into stacks. We don't know if it's going to be successful or not yet to actually look at it as a punt build because you don't want to stack too heavy. But at least if you go a couple of stacks, you could get some very friendly games with the schedule because there's a lot of 4-game in those final weeks. And especially if your commission is not a shithead and has you playing to the very end of the season, when it's just you need to, again, please sit down and have a counseling session with your commissioner and get them to move back the ending.
March 24th. March 24th is the magical date, man. Don't leave it to chance of randomness of load management, no matter how much the league wants you to believe that they're going to enforce this thing. The players always find a way to get around it. So yeah, just end it early, less stress on everybody that's playing for some money or even if you're playing for free, man. I don't want to be playing to the end and all my stars are out of missing games. So it's not an enjoyable experience. March 24th, that's the date.
Magical day. Man, loving the articles talking about the platform and on Yahoo right now. I'm with you in this club. I just want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya because there's the one thing that stood out at your end of season. I said this is when I want to get Dan on the show because I want to sit down and have a commiserations and pour out a glass of Japanese whiskey for our 22-23 season of Jalen Green. Oh, big L's for us last year. What was your biggest L's apart from Jalen Green last season? And what were your biggest wins in fantasy last year?
Ooh, Brook Lopez was a huge L. That one was just beaming on the spreadsheet. Matt Lawson put together a list of analysts rankings by the end of the season. And I think Raphael Johnson from Roto World was the best on this particular guy. They want to say he had him in maybe top 60 or something. I had Brook Lopez 140, 150, somewhere deep buried.
Him in the 8th, 9th round, he was just sitting there and needed a center, man. Let's not all say that we thought he was going to be a GOAT last season. He was the best.
Dude, he was up for defensive player of the year for the first 2 months of the season. This guy was
insane.
He turned back the clock a decade, playing Brooklyn Nets. Brook Lopez here, all-star Brook Lopez. So I wasn't going to beat myself up on it too much, but he was just not on my radar enough that yeah, I ranked him horribly. I think that was probably the biggest gap of anyone in my rankings. That wasn't a surprise like Jalen Williams. I didn't have him very high. Whereas as the season progressed, I was on the train of, yo, you need to pick up this guy because this is for real. But pre-draft, I didn't think that he was going to make the impact that he did. On the flip side, I would say my biggest win was probably De'Aaron Fox. I was super high on him ever since they acquired Domantas Sabonis. I was like, yo, that connection, another interesting stack potential there. I think that he's actually a really good player that I thought was going to reach that all-star level, and he just happened to do it because he was more efficient from the field. He shot threes. He made his free throws, all those things. He had signs of being able to make that progression last season. So I was happy to get on that one. Jalen Brunson was another guy that I saw. I was very high on. I was willing to spend that 4th rounder on him last year. I thought he was going to be phenomenal, and he was. All the signs similarly to De'Aaron Fox. I thought that once Luka was injured in that playoff run, it was very apparent that Jalen Brunson could run an offense, and that was actually perfect for Julius Randle too because the ball was in his hands, less turnovers. Randle was a better fantasy performer by getting Brunson there. So I think I'm better at projecting guards than any other position, but we'll see, man. I'm cooking up a couple sleepers and breakouts that I think will go a different way that aren't guards. It's going to be an interesting season, man. I think there's still a lot to be figured out with this Damian Lillard situation and but Hield now being on the block. I think there's going to be some interesting movement around training camp, but it's going to be a fun season, man. I can't wait.
And I'm really curious to see what Donovan Mitchell goes with that talk in Cleveland that he's not going to sign that extension right now. Like, you want to show out again, but he just showed out. So, I mean, like, I don't think you don't want to be the Cleveland Cavaliers organization and not retain the services of Donovan Mitchell after all you gave up to get Donovan Mitchell. But again, he's still an NBA player. He's still a star. So he wants to showcase himself potentially to make himself more valuable. Because of the trade, he's not eligible for that Jalen Brown super max. So he's the one, he wants to make sure he punches his ticket 100%.
Mitchell, I think, is good to be a top 20 player for sure. Could probably get to top 15. I wouldn't be scared to draft him early second round. They're going to be a really good team too. And I think Evan Mobley is the guy that I'm expecting to take the biggest leap in that Cleveland
Cavaliers stack,
team.
Baby. Cavaliers stack.
I love that. I think that's a great stack. A great stack.
I'm a big high on that stack because you can get a great first round pick, especially if you're at the tail end, like 10 or back end. Because like you said, Donovan is going to be like a top 20. You could probably get him earlier on in mocks, about 22 to 26, 28, but he wasn't falling really deeply into the third round. But he really now has crept up top 20. So if you're on the tail end anywhere from pick 8 to 12, and you can pick up Donovan Mitchell outside of that, I guess the trail right now is being like Durant, Anthony Davis falling around about the 14th pick. So then you shape out, people are really high on Anthony Edwards, where I prefer Donovan Mitchell over Anthony Edwards. Like, call that what you will. People might be like, but I definitely rate Donovan Mitchell this season over Anthony Edwards, just because there's so much going on in Minnesota that I'm not certain on.
Yeah, they keep on saying that this is Ant's team now. But there's still quite a few people in the room, man. Like, Karl-Anthony Towns is still going to need shots. Jaden McDaniels has looked great, and he's another late round guy that he doesn't need a lot of usage to be successful in fantasy. Like, he averaged a block and a steal last year, and he shoots threes at a 40%, almost 40% clip. So I'm expecting him to get better. He's being so slept on.
He is. And so I'm looking to that stack, and you could make a stack in the second round. You get a really, like, God knows, if you get Jason Tatum or someone like that to put up your points in that first round, and you back on that to Donovan Mitchell, maybe in your second, you could pick up Evan Mobley, probably fourth round if you're lucky, because that's early fourth round value. Your early fourth. You get Jarrett Allen in there, and all of a sudden, and that's, you get Darius. If you get Darius Garland for your assist to boy that one, and you pick up Mobley, whew, that's a nice little look, and that's a sexy little stack, if I don't say. You mentioned McDaniels. Do you have a top? I know you're toying with it right now. Do you have early sleeper? A couple that you want to be like breakout sleeper guys that you were like, these are some people I'm looking at early.
Who is their main one? So I was just looking at my list real quick. I mean, I think that it's a little early, but I think this is going to be the year for Jalen Green, man. It's got to be. Like, maybe I'm doubling down, but I think it just made it a lot easier now that Kevin Porter Jr. is probably going to be gone. I think that Jalen Green is going to take that leap in efficiency, and that's really what kept him outside of the top 200. He was better in points, rebounds, and assists last year. Now that he's got a good head coach that understands how to get buy-in from his players, they have a commitment defensively. That's not his best strong suit, but I think he's there to get a bucket. And playing alongside Fred VanVleet is only going to make him better and more efficient. So I'm really excited about Jalen Green. I have him aggressively ranked in the top 70 this year, and he was definitely not that last year. So I think that that's one guy that I'm not going to be afraid to draft.
I traded for him. After draft day last season. I was with you. I was like high on the opportunity that he had on a cruddy Houston Rockets team. He had opportunity. I thought he was a really good pair with like Jabari Smith Jr. I just thought that pick and roll game with them could be in potential. And then it soured in the first 10 games, and they were bickering with each other on the court, and there was disharmony under Silas. And you're right. You get an adult in the room in Ime Udoka who wants to make a change. They've gone out and they've got assets to make a better basketball team. And I think this is like after the Kevin Porter Jr. situation, which is just horrible. But there's an opportunity now. And I hate to be like that guy, like, oh, that's great. Well, it is, unfortunately, a shit situation. Like, but then this is what happens in the NBA and in life when this is the lemonade that you get out of it, which is Jalen Green in fantasy realm only. We're talking about, not reality. Like, that's a really dreadful situation. So in this regard, Jalen Green now has the keys to the kingdom to be the best second guard opposite Fred VanVleet.
I thought another name here. I think Markel Fultz. I think this is the contract year that he's trying to get the bag. I think he sees behind him they drafted Anthony Black, who can play point guard. Cole Anthony's still there. Jalen Suggs is another body. They just have bodies there. And I think that we saw the growth that we've been looking for in Markel Fultz last year. He shot 51% from the field. He gives you the steals that you want at the point guard position. His free throws improved. I think he's a guy that's going to be a lot better than his ADP may suggest. He could be a guy that's going to be flirting with that top 60, playing with such dynamic players like Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter. This Orlando Magic team is going to be better. And I love targeting my sleepers on teams that people are probably disregarding that are going to be way better going into the season. So you talked about the Pacers earlier, another team that's been surprised, and that East is wide open, man. The Pacers is going to rise up along with the Orlando Magic. They're going to be a lot better this year.
Dude, Magic stack. That's not a bad stack. Paolo,
that's a lot of faith
Wagner.
in Paolo to get better, but I'm with it.
Oh, no, but you dropped it. If you can drop solid, then you just throw in a little cheeky stack on the side. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like, that's not that bad. If you think
of Paolo,
Carter Jr.?
Yeah, that could definitely be done.
I'm
going to send you all my little stacks, man. I feel like you can have a large stack or like a mini stack, like a Big Mac.
I have a large. I've been large mini stacking the heck out of this. Like since I first said that on a podcast, I've been like, "Is this something that I could really push?" I'm like, I'm going to be like the stacks guy because it's just fun. Like if you can lean into it, you can get certain dudes at certain draft points. And Markel Fultz, I'm right there with you in the honor of NBA Jam. He is an absolute breakout star. I know Adam King has been picking him up late in the 90s quite frequently. So he's one of those point guards around the zone of D'Angelo Russell, who's right around there. And D'Angelo Russell will probably be a Dallas Maverick by the end of the season or an Indiana Pacer. Because if the Lakers are going to trade, that's that contract again. It's such a friendly trade contract. It matches almost perfectly up with Buddy Hield. We know the Lakers have been trying to get Buddy. They're not going to sacrifice a whole bunch of pieces. I think they've learned that lesson over time. But that Kyrie contract as well, like the way that's shaken out. Like, man, I don't know. If Buddy goes early, I don't think it's going to be LA. If he goes late, it's one of those ones. But D'Angelo Russell and Markel Fultz are all around that same zone in drafts right now in the late 90s. And Fultz has improved steadily since he's made his comeback, you would say. So he's definitely someone to be watching on. That being said, the guys who you're high on, is there a guy by way of Cat from last season? The guys who are like, you're really high, their floor is there, but if their floor drops, they just drop back in your drafts. Like similar to Cat last year, everyone was like top 12 for Cat, and obviously he came back quite low because of the situation. Is there someone that you think right now is being ranked very highly and that you haven't maybe in your XRanks put up there as much, and that's where there's this discrepancy because you're like, actually, no, I don't see that opportunity. In fact, I think it's going to be worse for them, and I'm bringing them back down my board.
I would say that's probably overrated. It's probably lazy, but Ben Simmons, like I've seen people trying to buy back into like, whoa, Ben's healthy. I don't think it's worth the headache, man. Like I'm going to continue to rank him low just because I don't know what version of him we're going to get. And if he winds up being great and he's better in terms of the mental wellness and his mental wellness, as well as his health, his back issue and his knee issue, awesome. You're getting a great value, but I just can't, based off what we've seen over the last.
And he's not playing for the Australian Boomers issue. So that's a very personal one here in Australia. We
No,
just
I
want
believe it,
the
man.
guy
I'll
in
be
green
feeling
and
that
gold.
shade too. Like, come on,
no,
bro.
man,
like,
this
you're born here. Come on, like you got to represent.
Come on, man, just play. Kyrie wanted to play for us.
There's other NBA players that are playing for their native teams because they want that competition, like for their nation, which is awesome. So yeah, I don't know. The Ben is just one of those weird guys that I'll probably not come around on unless I actually see it. Zion Williamson's probably similar. I rank him lower than what his per game value would suggest, and that's only because like I don't know what version of him I'm going to get. So I think no matter what, I would say that he's going to be a little bit overvalued in the market, just given the health risks there. And I think that there's a bunch of landmines with the people that are load managing. Like even though the NBA stipulated this rule change, Kawhi Leonard's still going to be one of the best per game performers, but by nature of the way that you're just not going to get him for as many games. So like there's certain players that I think are going to be overvalued based on your format. So if you're playing in a roto league, Kawhi Leonard's fine. It doesn't matter how many games he plays because what he does across the board is consistent and efficient. But if you're talking about head to head, I'm going to need you I want you for 70 games. So I'm going to rank someone like Jason Tatum over certain guys. Like at first I actually had Jason Tatum over Joel Embiid because as much as Embiid is talking about how he's in the best shape of his life, I don't know how he's going to fare with Nick Nurse. Like, I don't know what Nick Nurse's rotation is going to be like. He plays his guys heavy minutes. Usually heavy minutes doesn't equate to much more than a nagging injury for Embiid being randomly out on a Wednesday night. Like, Jason Tatum
That's
doesn't
a
take
really
games
good
off.
point with your second pick. That's actually a really good red flag. I mean, I've just thought about the natural, but you're really right. If you think about the coaching style of Nick, that's a really good point. I might actually lean into, if I get a second pick, I might even prefer a Luka.
I have Luka over. I think I have Luka over Joel right now. Man, I've been tempted to move Joel to like 5 just because of also that James Harden situation. I feel like I don't know if the Sixers are gonna come back to the table or not, or whether he's gonna. I don't know if he's gonna fix his switch. Yeah, I don't know, but
I actually, you know what? That's a really good, because again, when we're thinking about this with the analyst hat on, you've got to think about part of it's all numbers. I mean, like there's so much that's just numbers. Like the math has got a math. But when the math doesn't make sense, the reason math doesn't make sense is because of humans.
Yeah.
And it's always human error. And human error is coaching. It's people, it's egos, it's attitudes in the room. Because again, we are talking about the NBA, one of the most ego-driven like soap operas that exist these days. Even you see it in the news feeds and the media feeds. There's a lot of this. I mean, look at the Dame situation. If that is not like Days of Our Lives for the NBA, I don't know what is right now.
Like, I'm talking about the NBA, 100%.
Like this is, am I Tyler Hero? Ain't no friends in this business. Wait, I gotta do something cool. Put my glasses on a different way. Like, wait a minute, I gotta wear something. I wear my glasses on the side of my hat like this if I'm Tyler Hero. Like, ain't no friends in this business. Well, no, there's not, because it's a business and you're still a basketball player. And I know how many times Jimmy Butler's worn your jersey and spoken you up, but Jimmy Butler wants buckets and Jimmy Butler wants championship rings. And
right,
he wants that ring. And have you not seen what thermonuclear dumping sites that he's left organizations in previously with young guys? This is Damian Lillard. He wants Damian Lillard. Damian wants to go there. See you, Tyler. It's not hard, but it's cents on the dollar for what Damian Lillard brings to the organization. So I think there's this opportunity for guys to be moved around with these egos that slip them up. And at the end of the day, even if Kyrie stays or goes in Dallas, regardless of what you believe at the end of the day, he's still Luka. He's still going to play a bunch of games. He's still going to fill your stat sheet. But he hasn't, I mean, he gets injuries, but not to the niggling nature. Try and say that 3 times fast. Niggling nature of Nick Nurse injuries that could possibly be plaguing Joel Embiid this season, which is a really good point when you're drafting high, because you do not want to burn. Like, it's not going to tank your draft entirely, but you don't also want it to like derail it when you're trying to bank on a build that's based around one particular person as well.
Exactly right. And I think that's where, I think drafting the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is another team that's going to be way better this year in the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Indiana Pacers with Tyrese Halliburton, Jason Tatum. Like, those guys, they're going to play 70 games. Like, it's just where they are in their careers, their contract situations, and they're at that age where they're not over the hill to the point where I'm like, should I be questioning whether you're going to take some games off or not? Like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a great fantasy player, another great guy for Roto, because you don't know how many games you're going to get. Bradley Beal, same thing. I just don't know how many games I'm going to get. So just keep that in mind. Like, sure, is Embiid an MVP caliber player year in, year out? Yes. And do you want him on your team? Is he a good fantasy player? Absolutely. But you have to think about, if you're playing in head-to-head category leagues, how many games are they going to play? Because that is probably one of the most underrated factors of availability. Is probably one of the best underrated stats that you can have. So Tatum, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. I think it's when, if you put in if you do analytics behind the scenes, so if you just don't draft for fun and you're doing it, if you're being competitive and you put together your table of how many expected games, I look at my games played over the rest of my competition in my league. Like 100% I'm looking down there. And if I'm getting like 840 games throughout my course of my season, 850, and my competition has 20 less games, 30 less games. I mean, it's over the weeks, but it's games. It's games. And head to head, volume is going to help you. It might tank your turnovers. That's why I kind of always just take that out of my equation a little bit. I mean, I know I sound like a jerk saying I just punt for turnovers. No, I do consider them, because it's a cat and you want to win a category. But I can win. If I can win 2 at the sake of 1, that's where I'm kind of leaning into with that. So that's where I kind of look into that very heavily. Mate, before I let you go, Dan, I've got some I've got fast five for you. I've got 5 questions that I haven't pre-prepared, and I've sent you a few, like maybe they're going to be like this. I'm going to ask you a couple of them because I know you're a bit of an old head, and we already did the video game one. But I got 5 questions for you that are NBA related and non-NBA related. First one of this one: who's your favorite all-time player?
Oh, that's a tough one. At its peak, Allen Iverson. Dark horse, Penny Hardaway. The GOAT, Michael Jordan.
I like that. I'm a big Penny fan. I was wearing my Penny jersey. Actually, I'm not Penny jersey, wearing it. I was wearing it. It's still beside me.
The white colorway. Oh man, that's tough. I got a Penny.
I literally was wearing. I was wearing it this week. It was so hot here. Oh, is that?
I got a little starting lineup doll of Penny Hardaway and the Magic.
Nice. I got the little Penny Pop Funko as well.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm a massive man. Yeah. Penny and Shaq, Zoe and Larry Johnson back in the day were like my go players.
Oh man, that was a squad,
love them.
Man.
That was like
Charlotte team was
that
dirty.
was it. That was a dirty team, man. If you were a hot dog, what sauce would you like on you?
Mustard, dark mustard, preferably.
What's dark mustard? Is that some kind of weird American mustard we don't know about?
Like a spicy brown. It's usually like a little bit darker in color. Usually got some brown dots in it. I probably have one in the fridge somewhere, but
you got to send me a picture. You got to send me a picture of this mustard. I don't know what's
crucial. Absolutely crucial. Not the standard yellow, like bright yellow mustard. No. Got to be spicy brown.
No, man. What is your favorite sneaker?
Ooh, favorite sneaker. Jordan 4s, bread. So black, red, gray colorway.
Yeah. The bread colorway. Very nice. Who are you grabbing this season, no matter what, in fantasy?
Ooh, no matter what. Got a lot of Alperen Şengün so far. He's my center that I think is gonna do work. I know they were talking about getting a backup center all offseason. Noise. I think that the Alperen Şengün is going to be awesome with Ime Udoka and Fred VanVleet and et cetera.
Do you think that's driven to make him work harder on defense?
I do. But I also think that he knows that he can play through him a little bit. So I think we're going to see him unleashed.
And last question, of all of the experiences that you had in fantasy since you made the move to being a full-time analyst, what has been the number one experience that you've had with a bullet? Apart from this podcast. I mean, no.
I don't know that I have a singular memory. I think it's more so just appreciating the journey along the way, because it's been a unique opportunity to build your own brand and kind of shoot for the stars, shoot for your dreams, and actually see it get somewhere. I think I pretty much always took the safe route. I went to college, I got a job that paid me, that type of thing. Like, I feel like I followed the rules, whereas this was like my first time going rogue. And it's scary, but I think it also has just made me grow, not only as a person, but professionally. And I get to talk to people like you and make all these different connections in the sports world that I wouldn't normally have done had I not made that journey and that leap to do this full time. So yeah, I think it's just appreciating that, man. And I think I should give a shout out to Adam Koffler, Zach Hanchu, Alex Burns. I started out with those guys. Like, we had our own podcast and we didn't think it would actually be anything. It started out just like, hey, we're kind of cool and we all love talking hoops, even though we all, have day jobs and everything. But we set aside some time, build out our fancy podcast. And I was like, I think I could do this all the time. And so that's kind of what gave me the motivation to do it. And everything else has just been grinding, man. And it's awesome. I wouldn't ask for anything better.
Man, it's a blessing to do what you love every single day, man. 100%.
It really is. And then having a drink for a nightcap too. With some good Japanese whiskey.
Absolutely, man. I can recommend several barrels. And it is Friday night over there in the Pacific. So thank you very much. Saturday morning here. And it's your birthday on Sunday. So happy birthday from myself and all of the Insight Fantasy Sports team and the Insight Podcast Network. Dan Titus, thank you. Check out, Dan, you've just dropped an article today on your tiered centers list. So make sure you check that out on Yahoo. I had my alert go off this morning for that one. Any plug away. Plug. Yeah,
so got some really exciting stuff coming this season for Yahoo. Definitely more video stuff. articles every week, of course. Make sure you want to check out my rankings for points leagues and category leagues. That's already up. That will be frequently changing, but if you're going into drafts, make sure you have that handy just in case if you need a little resource to kind of outperform your league mates there. And yeah, man, it's a lot of exciting stuff coming along the way. So continue to tap in with me and appreciate the time, Matt. This is awesome.
Anytime, Dan. Thank you so much. You take care of yourself. This has been an Insight NBA podcast. Make sure you click the links all below. You like, you subscribe, and get on there. And again, when we hit to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, which we're getting close, it's edging up there. I and the team, we're going to just put it together for you. If you get your name in the comment section of this video, we're going to take all of those viewers and those watchers. We're going to put them all in a list. We're going to do a random prize draw, and we're going to send you, one lucky person, a custom NBA jersey with your name on the back of your favorite team, just to say thank you very much for subscribing. So put your name in the comments below. Hope you liked the video. Check out Dan's stuff on Yahoo. We're the Insight NBA Podcast Network. Take care, all.